Basically, I want to do a video where I'm talking about, well, I'm actually doing it now. So I want to talk a little bit about how I came up with Musitude and uh, what the motivation for it was and what the thought process was. And so, yeah, I think I'll do it now. And so I was thinking, what is the ideal piece for that? And I was thinking something like maybe green sleeves because it's quite simple. Yeah. So I will use that as an example. But I wanted to say that before I even start doing the stream today, so actually a few weeks ago, I already had a crack at what the thumbnail would be. So I'll show you the process, show you some of the some of the examples. And I can't remember which one I was planning to use. So here they are. Let me just, it's on the wrong screen. Let me bring those over like that. So a friend of mine took my picture in Chinatown in the spring when it was raining stronger, which I love, my favorite kind of weather. And so I noticed that when you do these white outlines or colored outlines around figures, they stand out a little bit more. And I love this pink reflection on the rainy street. That's totally awesome. But the thing is, because I put this white outline around myself, it looks like I superimposed myself on this picture, which is actually real because you can see the raindrop. So the title is The Man Who Reinvented Music. But that sounds a bit too braggadocious. How I reinvented music. That's a previous thumbnail. Yeah, so a friend of mine said it would be better to have a thumbnail like this, especially because it's going to be small. So how I reinvented music. And that's the topic of this section of the stream, or if you're just watching a clip on YouTube, this YouTube video. So we decided to go with this one. And the other thing is MS Paint, it doesn't really let you do that thing where you can have a font, which like I've got an outline around my body helping me stand out, where you can have the font stand out. So what I did is I just made the same font in black and then and then just superimposed these letters over it, but it didn't really come out that well. But hey, check back. If you're watching this 2 years in the future, check back and you'll see how rough and ready the stream was when it'll get more and more sophisticated. But then you'll be able to look back at this and think, man, that guy didn't know how to do anything. Anyway, so that's going to be the thumbnail for the talk I'm giving right now. And what I'm talking about is really how I came up with this, what you see before you, which is Musitude notation, and really the whole Musitude system. So what I'll do is I'll explain a little bit about the process. So when I was growing up, I didn't have music lessons at school or at home really, and I think I took violin lessons a couple of times with a friend just to escape from a math class. But I think I stopped. I remember, I stopped taking them because the violin teacher bashed me on the head with her bow when I was a bit cheeky in class once. So I just stopped going to them. But she did say I had a good ear for music. And so when I was, as a teenager, I was a punk. I was just interested in punk music, and I wasn't interested in being a musician, not even playing guitar. But when I was 18 or 19, I started falling in love with classical music. And the weird thing is, it's not because somebody took me to some concert or opera. It's because I used to watch TV commercials that had incredible music in them. And I used to be enthralled by the music. And I had no clue it was a genre. I thought it was just music somebody had written for that TV commercial. But they were just co-opting really famous classical pieces. And but later I realized it was a genre, and I started exploring which composers I liked. Mainly Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart. All right, I should say them in chronological order. Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven. And with Beethoven being my favorite. So I started getting familiar with classical music. And still like generally punk music and electronica. So then the natural progression of listening to music that you love is to think that, if I could play that music, when I listen to the music, I feel a lot of joy. But if I could play that music, I think I would feel more joy. And then, of course, the progression is that once you learn to play music, if you play it with others, you feel even more joy. And then if you play it with others, for others, you feel even more joy. And I guess the ultimate, the apex of that is if you compose music and then you play it with others, for others. So just passively listening to music is wonderful. Everybody loves Spotify or other music apps. So I wanted to move to that second stage of being able to play pieces. But just like learning languages or learning lots of things in your adulthood, when your brain's not so malleable, it takes a lot more effort and a lot more work. And usually what happens is if you don't get a result with a certain period of time, like let's say practicing an hour a day for a year, then what happens is you start to lose motivation. And that's exactly what happened to me every time. So the first time, I think I was 20 or 21, I thought, when I was in school, I learned soprano recorders, so I bought a soprano recorder. I remember I was living in Manchester, New Hampshire at the time, and there was a convent nearby, and I don't know how I found this out, but a nun at the convent was giving free one-on-one lessons on recorder. So I remember going for some lessons there. And anyway, I stuck with it for a while, playing recorder. I think, 6 months, maybe a year. But I wasn't progressing to be that great. And I remember I did learn a simple piece, and I played it with a Japanese lady who played piano. That was pretty cool. But then, there comes a point where people are willing to put effort in and suffer to learn something with the hope that once I attain a certain level, I'll get joy from it. And once you reach that level, it's a kind of like a level of sustainability, because when you get joy from something, it stimulates energy within you. That's why when two people or great friends can have a conversation, they can talk for 10 hours and they still feel enthusiastic. Whereas if you're listening to a droning on talk by somebody, hopefully not this podcast, then this stream, then you lose energy quickly. But if you get stimulated by feeling joy and enthusiasm, you don't feel you're losing energy because it just regenerates and regenerates. So when you first practice a musical instrument, you can't get any joy from it because you're not good enough to play anything nice. And so you've just got to pour energy out. But everybody's got their limitation. And the statistics show that only 3% of people can read traditional music and play an instrument. And I should be on this screen, shouldn't I? So only 3% of people can read traditional music and play an instrument. 97% of people can't read traditional music and play an instrument. But what's more shocking to me is there's a big survey they did in America, and they found that 90% of non-musicians, so of that 97% who are non-musicians, 90% of them have a strong desire to be musicians. So that means getting complicated in the percentages here, but that means, and I've done the exact calculation, exactly 87.3% of all people are not musicians, can't read music, but have a strong desire to be. Sorry, mosquito. And that's crazy, right? It's crazy. 3% of the population can read music, play an instrument, but 87.3% of all people have a desire to, but can't. And you know what? Many of them have tried, so I wasn't alone in my failure. And they try and they have the same experience as me. They put out lots of information. Oh, hey, Recorder Guy. Nice to see you again. I did a stream before. I was hoping you'd come in, but it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. A lot of those people will put in a lot of information. Let me read out Recorder Guy's message. I really agree with that. Helping people have fun early in their musicianship is a great way to get them motivated so they can reach a level where it becomes fun. 100%, yeah, definitely. And that actually, that explains why games, although they faded, games like Guitar Hero became crazy popular. And think about it, it's just a game, but it made $4 billion. How often do you hear about a game making $4 billion? Maybe GTA and a few games. But Guitar Hero let people at least pretend they were musicians, and they had to do at least some level of participation skill. And they were willing to shell out $4 billion for it. So it shows the desires there. So what I observed in myself and subsequently in others is that if you have a reservoir of desire to achieve something, but if you spend that reservoir, every time you practice hard, you suffer really. Give up energy and time and you're suffering. And then You do it again the next day and the next and the next day, week after week, month after month. But if you're not reaching a level where you're not getting anything back in terms of the joy of the activity, it gets harder and harder to generate the energy. And it's not that people are lazy, because, doing an hour a day, let's say on the classical guitar, busting your fingers an hour a day for 6 months, that person's not lazy. It's just that some people have an adaptability to music. And when they're young, they tend to pick it up really quickly. And also, they've got their mother whacking on the back of the head of the teacher and making them do the lessons. And so, but people, especially people who've already become adults, their brain's not that malleable. And they might practice for a long time, but eventually they're going to reach the point, just like with people who try to give up smoking or lose weight or buy an exercise machine, where if they don't feel they're getting a result, then they're going to just stop spending the energy. It's something about human psychology. It really won't let you record a guy. Exactly. Music practice has a whole lot of time where we don't feel like we're getting better, and that can be demotivating. Totally, yeah. And I guess if they've got a teacher, a good teacher will try and know how to make it fun. But yeah, like sites like yours, where they can feel like it's encouraging them and helping them along, that would be cool. I wish I'd had that when I was trying to learn recording in the beginning, actually. And so where was I? So basically what happens is people eventually, they give up and they go back to listening, but they never lose that yearning to be a musician. But unfortunately, they now have something else, another feeling, alongside that continued yearning to be a musician. And that is, they feel a little bit of regret. And even wrongly, in my view, a little bit of shame or a little bit of sadness that they couldn't achieve. And that's exactly what I felt. And then some time went by after I'd given up trying to learn soprano recorder. I wish I'd gone for alto or tenor recorder, but I didn't even know they existed at the time. But they're much cooler because they're bigger and better sound in my view. And so then what happened was I really loved Spanish classical guitar music. So I bought a classical guitar, and I tried learning classical guitar as well. Again, I struggled to progress, and partly it was for me. It was because the concept of you've got to memorize, okay, this note is played when you press this string on this fret. But if that string's busy because you're already playing a note on that, you can play the same note on a different string or a different string. And all that kind of thing, it confused me a bit. And then key signatures confused me. And anyway, so I practiced, and I could play a few pieces with classical guitar, but I just really couldn't get to the point where it's sustainable for me. And then some time went by, and I regenerated enough energy to think, you know what, I'll give it another try. I bought a B-flat clarinet because I love the sound of clarinet, especially like in Mozart's clarinet concerto or some Beethoven pieces. And so I tried again with the B-flat clarinet, and by that time I was back in the UK, and I remember going to the Barbican and spending £15 an hour with a teacher. But I was just, first of all, you remember when you were a little child and the doctor put the lollipop stick in your mouth to push your tongue down? But that dryness of the lollipop stick, sometimes it gives you that same feeling like when somebody scratches their fingers down a blackboard. So the reed on the clarinet was like that all the time. It used to freak me out. Anyway, so but still, I love the clarinet, so I persisted. I struggled to get certain notes, and eventually the same thing happened. I was trying really hard every day, and I didn't progress enough to get a lot of joy from it. So I kind of gave up. I remember reading in the exercise book I was using, I remember saying, instead of playing 2 hours just once a week on Sundays, just half an hour every day is better. Yeah, and that's what I was doing. And so that was me, and I was back to just passively listening to music. But what had happened in my journey of trying to learn how to play an instrument is I had learned the fundamentals of music theory, how sheet music works. And I had learned through trying 3 different instruments what the learning process is for an instrument, and also what instruments are. Every instrument is kind of got a different mechanism. And so because I'd learned that, it was all in the back of my mind. And now fast forward a few more years, I'm living in South Korea. I was writing for a newspaper there, and I stayed there quite a few years. And then one day I was setting up my computer, and some days before that I'd come back to it now for the 4th time in my life. I'd come back to it and I'd be thinking, maybe I could buy like a beat up old upright piano and just try again, start taking lessons. Because I often dream that I'm playing piano and I'm like madly playing these complex pieces. And in the dream it worked great, and I'm actually improvising as well. But obviously I can't play piano at all. And so, but it was on my mind. And then one day I was sitting at home and I was talking to a friend back in the UK, and I was typing on MSN, if you remember that. So when I got this idea, it was quite a long time ago. It was like 2005 or 2006. But so I was typing on MSN to a friend, and I was listening to a Beethoven piano sonata. It was a really slow one, Pathetique sonata, and because each note was very slow, then as I was typing to my friend a message on MSN, it wasn't anything important, so it was just a comment on something, and I found myself just lazily typing each letter of the words of the message to the beat of the music, and then suddenly it just all poured in like an epiphany. You know, that's what they call it, an epiphany. And it was, you know, when I play a musical instrument, it's about mastering an interface. Whether it's a piano, it has piano keys, a guitar has strings on frets, a recorder has the different holes that you cover with your fingers. You master the interface and manipulate the instrument, and the instrument makes the sound. But to play an instrument well, you've got to memorize the interface so that you don't even need to look at the instrument. You can just play it without thinking. It's like an extension of yourself. But the second part of that is you have to learn sheet music. And sheet music is, you know, what it looks like with the lines and the dots on the things. Maybe I can bring up some examples here. This keyboard. So if I bring this, okay, maybe this is a good example. No. How about this one? No, I don't want to get any copyrighted stuff. I think this one will be fine. This will just do nicely. So, here's a. Let me go to this view. So here's examples of sheet music, and there, let me put it down there. So sheet music looks complicated and daunting, but actually, if you analyze what it is, it's basically there's two elements, and then there's addition to that. So you've got all these different lines, and if a note, one of these dots is on the line hit there, or a space between the lines, it tells you a different note, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then the shape of the note, you see some of these are different shapes, like this one here is a hollow circle, this one's a filled in circle with a dot. They just basically describe the duration of the note. So sheet music tells you which note and how long do you play that note. And then it goes on to the next one, and then it's which note and how long do you play that note. And those are the fundamentals of sheet music. You read it in sequence, especially if it's a single piece, a monophonic piece. So monophonic means one note at a time. Polyphonic is like a piano where you can play 2 or 3 notes at the same time. So when you read sheet music, you look at each note one by one, and then you play it on the instrument or you play it on the piano, whatever the interface is. So it occurred to me one day that, you know, the QWERTY keyboard, this fella down here, the QWERTY keyboard is an interface. So why can't that be my musical instrument? Why? Because the struggle of learning a musical instrument is you have to memorize an interface until you're completely familiar with it. And that's what people try to do that, but at some point they give up. But if there's an instrument or an interface that people have already mastered, then why can't we just retask that as a musical instrument? It's not as daft as it sounds, actually, because if you think about it, well, actually, let me go back. If you think about it, some musical instruments didn't themselves start out as musical instruments. Some musical instruments started out as communication devices, like a keyboard is, a QWERTY keyboard. So drums, for example. I think there's a good chance drums started out as battlefield communication devices. And even if they did start out as musical instruments, they were used a lot in ancient times for communication on the battlefield. And trumpets would be the same. And so, so it's not unusual that a communication device gets retasked as a musical instrument. So, and actually, if you look at the ancient telegraph machines from back in the day, like the 1800s, some of them, they used like piano keyboards with letters on them for sending letters, almost like ancient typewriters. So it just occurred to me one day that I'm already familiar with all the keys, at least the numbers and letters. Oops, I just pressed space bar. I'm already familiar with all these keys. So why can't these be my musical instrument? And so once I got that idea in my head, I started thinking, okay, that's cool. So I can read sheet music basically, but most people can't. And so I would need a sheet music that matches the instrument. So the thing about traditional music is every instrument people play, whether it's piano or trumpet or violin or guitar, they all use the same universal language of sheet music. There are some differences like with drums, but I needed a type of sheet music that would match this instrument. And also, ideally, it would be something like with the instrument, something that they already know. So what you see here on the screen is the end result. It went through many iterations. I started out with a pen and paper. Let me jump to this one. I started out with a pen and paper, just doing experiments. And really, I just used an intuitive sense of what would be ideal. And so let me just explain how Musitude notation works. Just as with traditional music, we have something to tell you which note in the sequence and something to tell you how long that note should be played. So let's just ignore these two here, because these two mean we call them ghost shells. These two mean there is no note, it's just silence, a rest. We call it a rest. But the first note here is H. Only in Musitude notation, this has no meaning in terms of language, whether it's a H or a K or an M or O or a P. There's no language relation to these. They're just symbols, which is what they are by themselves. Letters have no meaning apart from I and A. They're just symbols, and it's more the pattern of letters. Like if you combine C, A, and T in that order, you get cat. If you turn them around, you get T, A, C. You get tack. And it's completely different meaning. So individually, letters don't have meaning. They're just symbols. Just like an arrow is a symbol. Like these icons here are symbols. So, but what we do have here is each letter in the alphabet, including the numbers, they all correspond to a key, a position. So now I know let me go to this one. If I press these letters here that you see up here, look what happens. We activate the keyboard. H, K, M, O, P, O, M, J, K. Wait, are we K? No, F, H, J. So if I play it, but you can also see that there's different types of shapes. So a circle just means one beat. So if it's just a circle, it's like, if it's a series of circles, it would be like do, 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 do. But because this is a circle is one beat, so this is a circle stretched to be a second circle. So that's two beats. And then this is one circle and a half circle, 1.5 beats, half circle, half a beat, and so on. And we just group them up. In this case, it's grouped into threes, but they can be grouped into twos or 4 or 5. So look what happens when I play these individual letters on the keyboard and for the durations indicated by the shells. Right, I'm just going to play them. In fact, I will turn on tracking so you can get a visual aid to follow along with what I'm playing. So let me stop that. So yeah, so now suddenly I'm a musician, and not only am I a musician, but if I know my way around a QWERTY keyboard and I can read my ABCs, then I'm already a musician, as we say in Musitude, even before the first minute I start. So some people, they can sit down in front of a piece like this and instantly play it. Whereas they've got it in their head that I'm not a musician, I'm not musical, and maybe if I practice for a year, you put a brand new piece I've never seen before, I can. It's called sight reading, when you play a piece without ever having seen it instead of just practicing. So that's their mindset, and some people are even healthily skeptical, and they tell me up front to my face I'm very dubious about this, and so but what happens is when they play it, they can feel it's real. It's not automated. Like if you, I mean, I made a bit of a mistake there, but because I wasn't focusing. But if you play a wrong key, just like any musical instrument, you get a wrong note, or a bomb note, as they say. In fact, I went to a music publishing, a really prestigious music publishing company, to talk about a deal in London, and one of the ladies, a bit of a posh lady, she came in the meeting, and she was a classical pianist, and she was a bit gruff and a bit straightforward, like go here, no nonsense type, and then she said to me, you know, I'm very dubious about this claim that you've invented a new kind of music, sheet music. So I sat down and I demonstrated everything, let them have a little try, and then when we were leaving the meeting, she pulled me to one side and she said, you know, when I came to this meeting, I was determined to hate it, but I actually quite like it. So that was great. I wish I had that on. I should have recorded her saying that. But so yeah, so I found that people play these pieces. Let me go back to this view. People play these pieces, and in the beginning, you can see it on their face while they're playing it. They don't actually believe they're playing it, and that's what happens when people who win the lottery, right? What do they always say? They say, "I still can't believe it. It's not real. It hasn't sunk in." It's only after they've had multiple experiences of it being real that they start to believe it. And the reason they don't believe they're doing it, even as they're actually doing it, is because it's been programmed in their head that they're not musicians. But actually, they are not musicians with guitars or pianos or traditional sheet music, in the same way that I'm not a language speaker in Japanese or Spanish or Russian, but I am a language speaker in English, and I can speak a little bit of Korean. But so yeah, I am a language speaker, but I'm a language speaker in English, whereas I'm not a language speaker in Japanese or Spanish or Russian. So in the same way, I and 87.3% of all people, they are not musicians when it comes to traditional Western instruments and notation. But actually, even before they actually try Musitude, they are musicians with this. And the evidence is that a huge number of them, I've seen them sit down for the very first time. You know, maybe they don't have the rhythm perfect, like I've practiced this piece, but they play, it may sound a little bit like this. But you know, after I explain about the duration of the notes, then it's not long before they're playing this. In fact, I'll play it now. So this website will let you play a duet. So this is part 2, and that would sound like this. So I will tell the website to play that part 2. Let me just go to this so you can just see it straight. I'll tell the website, actually like this, I'll tell the website to play part 2, but I'll show part 1 on the screen and I will play part 1. So it will count me in and it will track it. But I will be playing what you see on the screen, and the computer will play part 2. I did it wrong, so I'll start again. I'm telling the... Wait, oh yeah, I know what I did wrong. I'm telling the website to play part 2. I told it to play part 1 by mistake, so there you go. Play part 2, website. Yeah, and anybody who can use a QWERTY keyboard or is a good texter on a phone and who can read ABCs can play that. If you don't believe me, pause this video, go to musitude.com, musitude.com, and just type in Greensleeves duet, and you can see that on your screen too, and you'll play it. Then come back, and then we'll continue talking. I'll wait. Hi, welcome back. So basically, that was my process. I solved the two problems there. I realized, oh, you know what? There's this interface that everybody already knows, and I learned to touch type quite a while ago because I wanted to do writing, and so there's an interface that everybody knows, and everybody in the West can read ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and then the third element of that is they have an association between those two things. So when you see an A, you know where the A key is. When you see a Z, you know where the Z key is. And it doesn't even matter, like with German keyboards or the keyboards where the keys are in different places. That doesn't matter because they press whatever key corresponds with A or Z or T or 1 or 5. And yeah, it plays. And if they make a mistake, there's no compensation. The website and the app doesn't help you out in any way. It's not like auto aim on a console game. It just it's an electronic instrument, and so it's no different from having a Yamaha electronic keyboard from Argos or somewhere, or from Amazon, like $100 one. It might be making electronic sounds or using sound samples, but it's a real instrument. Sometimes people differentiate electronic instruments and traditional instruments, and they say real instruments. What they actually mean is acoustic instruments. So I always push back on that. So that's how I came up with Musitude, and it really is a music revolution. What else would you call it if there's been a system that's been locked out to 97% of the people? And suddenly there's a solution that opens it up to everybody. That's got to be a revolution. Just haven't got taken to the streets yet to bring Musitude to everybody. Instead, I'm taking to the airwaves and to Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and others. So yeah, that screenshot is just my Microsoft Paint effort at making screenshots a bit catchy. And my plan to give this talk and this presentation is actually in my pitch deck that I give to investors and business. So I've got graphics to illustrate all these points. But I just thought I'd give it a shot this time and explain how I came up with Musitude and who Musitude is for. And yeah, the one thing I haven't mentioned yet, which is what's the most important thing about Musitude? And the most important thing is that Musitude lets people access joy. And so sometimes it's kind of cheesy, but sometimes I say, we're not a technology company. We're not even a music company. We're a joy company. We're about helping people feel more joy. And the great thing about joy is it's not something that, it's in short supply, so you've got to use resources to manufacture more of it. Actually, joy exists in potential in everybody's mind and heart. And it's just a matter of unlocking it. And one way people can feel great joy is when they play music, especially when they play duets with the app or with the website and with their friends. You've got two laptops side by side. It's awesome playing a duets together and then playing for others. So Musitude is reaching out to those almost 90% of all people to have that latent desire to feel that joy. But they've just hit that barrier like I did so many times. And it's opening up that to them, completely free as well. And yeah, it doesn't mean they're going to become music teachers or great performers or composers, but that's not what 99% of people want. They just want to experience joy playing some cool pieces. So yeah, that's Musitude, and that's the end of this video on YouTube. But check out the website. Just go to musitude.com. The website needs a laptop or a computer because it has certain music facilities that won't work on a phone. But we do have a mobile app as well. So if you check out the website on your phone, it will redirect you to the App Store for the iPhone or Android phone. But you can try both. It's convenient to have it on the phone. carry it where you are and play pieces. But it's also cool. I prefer to type on a, where am I? There, on a tactile keyboard. So I prefer using the website, but yes, I think a lot of people like to use the phone as well. So yeah, please go and check out the website. And also, if you're looking at us on YouTube, then subscribe. If you're watching us on Facebook Live, is it Facebook Live, on our Facebook page, then and like and follow that. And if you're on Twitch, then you don't subscribe on Twitch, you follow, right? I'm not affiliated, so or anything like that. So yeah, just keep checking in, and we're going to keep doing these streams.